Mentioned President Biden just wrapped up in Anchorage, Alaska today on September 11th. He spoke moments ago, and the president mentioned his old-time colleague, the late Senator John McCain.
One thing I always admired about John was how he put duty to country first, and that's not hyperbole. He did. Above party, above politics, above his own person. This day reminds us we must never lose that sense of national unity. So let that be the common cause of our time.
Get to that soundbite in a second and what the president might have been speaking about there. But Chris, September 11th, opening thoughts?
Well, we are ill-prepared always for the vicissitudes of history. If you would have talked to Americans in the summer of 2001, they would not have, almost no one would have said that the major concern that they were thinking about was international Islamist terrorism, right? Militant Islam was not something that they were talking about. If you would have talked to Americans a month after September 11th, they would have forecast a totally different future than the one that we're living in now. Events change, things change, and what I am reminded of as an analyst, as an American, is don't take things for granted. The trajectory of history and the trajectory of life changes in a moment.
Julia, this was an interesting one for the president, right? For the first time in 22 times now, we've done this on September 11th. For the first time, the president didn't go to New York, didn't go to the Pentagon, didn't go to Shanksville, Pennsylvania, wasn't at the White House. Instead today at Alaska, coming home from the G20, and the White House was asked about this.
Yeah, it was certainly a choice, and I think, the White House is highlighting the fact that the administration is giving $4 million to the 9/11 Memorial Museum and Fund in New York City. There were Biden administration officials at a lot of the 9/11 landmarks, including Vice President Kamala Harris, who was at Ground Zero today, or the site of Ground Zero. But it's an interesting contrast to see, Republican presidential candidate Ron DeSantis going to Ground Zero.
Yeah, he was there.
And then, of course, Biden is in Alaska.
Yeah, well, that's $4 million as compared to the $6 billion that they released today to Iran.
Right. Okay, start there, go.
No, I just think it's odd timing, and maybe with President Biden not showing up to one of these memorial sites, you need to put maybe some distance between the memory that President Biden at least has built up around himself for September 11th, which was treating it as a fairly arbitrary deadline to withdraw from Afghanistan, fairly disastrous.
So what May is referring to there, the Associated Press is reporting that the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, has signed off on a prisoner exchange, essentially 5 Americans in Iran, in exchange for unfreezing $6 billion worth, Kurt, of Iranian frozen assets. The Associated Press reporting that the Secretary of State signed off on it last week, that Congress was informed about it today, and it brings up the question, why bring this up today?
Yeah, it sounds like something you would do when you don't really want a lot of attention on it, since it is 9/11. I don't know how anyone can draw any other conclusion than this is not something they're looking to spend a lot of time talking about today. And obviously, they're going to end up having to talk about it maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after. It'll certainly come under scrutiny. There'll certainly be a lot of opinions about it. I think it's weird that the president wasn't at one of the main places, New York, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C. He was in Alaska. I don't see how that makes a whole lot of sense to forfeit a commander-in-chief moment.
Interesting to me is his invocation of John McCain.
Yeah.
Joe Biden didn't serve in Vietnam. John McCain spent 5 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam. Joe Biden didn't protest the Vietnam War. He wasn't opposed. Joe Biden, like Donald Trump, avoided service and then tried to sort of walk a middle ground on the issue that massively divided his party. I heard in the president some wistfulness about having just been in Vietnam, having thought about what John McCain went through in Vietnam, his friend from the Senate, and the tinges of a person later in life thinking about the choices that he made and what his life was like.
Was it some of that, or was it also some of he's running for the presidency again? He brought up national unity, John McCain needing to come together as a country, and a possible shot at Donald Trump.
Was he trolling Donald Trump? It's always possible. Joe Biden likes to troll Donald Trump. Right. But I saw something personal there, and I think that the U.S. president's visit to Vietnam in a very post-Vietnam War space is another historical milestone that we're crossing today.
All right.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.